this report is saying 95% of the projects are not, they're stuck in the lab. They're not going into production. I don't know where they got that, because the number of people that I talk to that are using generative AI in their companies it has to be more than 5%. Either that, or I live in a bubble that is smaller than I thought.
Welcome to It's About Data, episode 31. This time we're joined by John Santaferraro, host of the Digital Analyst Podcast, to discuss the confluence of AI and analytics. All right, John, welcome. John Santaferraro, Ferraro Consulting, and you also run a very popular podcast you've been doing for about a year called The Digital Analyst, and Tony was on recently, and so he probably has a few things to say about that. Tony, take it away.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Anyway, John, good to see you again the last few weeks, and you've been hosting now, as I understand it, you're now like the 1 year mark, the 1 year anniversary of your video podcast with Solutions Review of the Digital Analyst. And I love that, basically that picture of you on the cover where you're basically kind of a half a cyborg from Tuscan, I'll add. But the other thing is that you've just recently hit a real sort of watershed here, which is you've totaled now 500,000 views over the past year.
Yeah, it's more than I ever imagined. It's fantastic, but we've had about 25 episodes and 500, just hit 500,000, and I'm looking at a million. Here we come. Let's do it.
Nice.
That's incredible. I think we need to basically glob onto your channel. We'll be parasitic sponges here.
Yes.
But you've also had on some amazing guests, and I'm just looking at just some of the roster. You've had Bruno Aziza, Hyun Park, Donald Farmer, Cindy Howson, Mike Ferguson. Then you had a whole bunch of my colleagues from the Data Gang, including Philip Russum, Andrew Bruss, Sanjeev, Kevin Petrie, Sean Rogers. You've had an amazing stable of guests, and the thing is that we're clearly quite jealous of you in terms of just the amount of insight and wisdom that you get exposed to. So I think the theme for our few minutes together today is just what are just some of your takeaways that you've had just speaking with this incredible roster of folks, and of course coming in with from your own experience. Of course, you and I have known each other go back probably close to 15 years back to the early days of big data, during the when you were at Actium. But anyway, so obviously it wasn't like you were just born a year ago, but from being the MC from Tuscany, I'll add, very jealous of the Digital Analyst. What are some of the things that you've learned? What have been some of your overall takeaways?
I got to start with the fact that in this industry, especially big data analytics, now AI kind of expands it all, but there's nothing more important in the industry than the relationships that we have. And
Agreed.
What a beautiful thing to have been here for 30 years and to get to launch a podcast a year ago and invite my friends to be on the podcast. And I have to attribute the success to the amazing people that have joined me on the Digital Analyst. Tony, you being one of them. Thank you for taking the time to come and be a part of that. And everybody has such a unique view. My other big takeaway is I have all of these conversations with everybody, and it only reminds me how little I know, because everybody that has come on the show is absolutely brilliant. One of the trends that I've seen, though, is we saw the explosion of Gen AI, and I know now, this report is saying 95% of the projects are not, they're stuck in the lab, they're not going into production. I don't know where they got that, because the number of people that I talk to that are using generative AI in their companies it has to be more than 5%. Either that, or I live in a bubble that is smaller than I thought. So I think that we are seeing great impact from generative AI, and I think the people that have been on the Digital Analyst are seeing that. And now we have this agentic explosion that's coming. I think we can talk about that more later, but I think that's going to be even bigger than the Gen AI explosion.
So I'm curious, what kinds of projects specifically are you seeing be successful? And also, what projects are not being successful? I kind of can think of some templates of things that haven't worked as well in my limited circle. But like you said, we're all in our own bubble. So I'm curious about your own experience in this regard.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, co-pilots. You can't say that that's not generative AI. And there were
agreed.
people that were doing natural language processing before and natural language search, but not the kind of natural language conversational work that is being done with something like a co-pilot. So anybody that has a large knowledge base of any kind, whether it's documentation for a program or an API or technical components or legal compliance, all of those, all of that gets fed directly. It's all text, right? So it's obviously, and those are real projects. You can't say that, and I guarantee you, those are not stuck in the lab. The other place where I'm seeing a lot of success is with business intelligence, and business intelligence plus generative AI plus documents that are being fed into it to enhance the knowledge. But BI is the make sense place to start because there was already a significant amount of data. There was already structure. There was already value being created. It's tied to business processes. And so by making all of that conversational, I mean, that's a huge success. We're seeing success in data engineering. We're seeing success in engineering, coding, right? These are all, in my opinion, big successes. And these projects are not stuck in the lab.
Yeah. Already being used day to day. Yeah. What's your experience, or what's maybe observation with text-to-SQL? Kind of what I've heard with practical deployments is that it tends to work a lot better if you put some guardrails around it and some schemas and things. If you just try to use it without those things, then it tends to generate SQL that fails. I don't know. What have you seen in that regard?
Yeah, basically text to SQL, I think, is failing. So
okay. So this is something we can talk about. Perfect.
I mean, Matt, I started covering the AI enablement in BI platforms all the way back in 2018, and there were already people at that time who were creating these semantic layers. And the BI companies that had a semantic layer in place are the ones that are experiencing the best and most accurate use of a text to SQL. I'm saying text to SQL only because it goes text from text to the semantic layer, and from the semantic layer to the SQL engine, and the SQL is writing so that the natural language interface for the end user never touches the data. So in that architecture, we're seeing it, but I haven't seen anybody that is doing direct text to SQL and having great success with it. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm limited. Tony, maybe you want to jump into that. I haven't seen it.
That makes sense, because basically if it just text to SQL, there is, as you say, no context. And it actually just taps into a conversation that we just recorded with John O'Brien just a few days ago that we're going to be releasing shortly. He's working on what he's called a unified or universal semantic layer. And actually, some of this, you may want to have a conversation with him. But basically, that's also something which Matt and I saw when we were at Day-to-Day Texas, last winter. That's a conference that's held in Austin the last weekend of every January. And what I saw was like an underlying theme here is that in the age of AI, what we need with data is context. And I think it's really interesting that you touched on that some of the best successes were with BI, were the semantic layers, because of course, folks like Business Objects started this idea of a semantic layer. I mean, in a very primitive compared to today, but back like almost 20 years ago. So that would seem to be kind of a natural springboard. Would you think?
Yeah, and I think there are additional companies with really strong semantic layers. ThoughtSpot has a really strong semantic layer. They were doing that from the very beginning when they first architected the product. Tellius has a really good semantic layer. A newer company, Zenlytic, Rapid Canvas, So we're seeing some new entrants, and then some folks that really got this back in the in the middle of the 2010s. So I think it's maturing really fast. The future of BI is kind of another conversation, but I'm
Yeah.
looking for AI to eventually turn the BI dashboard into a cockpit, so that you're actually with the right semantic connections, you can actually connect the intelligence in the dashboard with the operations as they go, so somebody can see the information, push a button like the pilot of a plane, and adjust course as they go. I think that's the real future of BI.
Yeah. But what I find interesting is that what we're talking about here is combining existing technologies. Some of these technologies people have complained about, frankly, over the years, like, you're never going to get that much out of semantic layer. It's too complicated. You combine that logical layer that's better at the deterministic stuff with the Gen AI layer that's better at the kind of probabilistic stuff. And that's where you really start to see the value. And as you were saying, when you just throw LLMs haphazard at a problem like text-to-SQL, it doesn't seem to work quite so well.
No. I imagine it could at some point, but that's not the strength of a large language model.
Right.
The strength is the automatic generation of a semantic layer. I have talked to a couple of companies that are beginning to do that type of thing, where you just describe a business to somebody, or even look at a business and the way that it's structured on a website, and be able to create potentially a semantic layer based on knowledge of that particular industry, whether it's e-commerce or utilities or whatever it happens to be. So there is some benefit to connecting at that level, but not connecting the Gen AI to the actual data, structured data itself.
Yeah, I think that's actually huge if you think about it, because we've been trying to approach this problem for a number of years, going all the way back to the case days, computer-aided software engineering. We were looking at the enterprise data model, the repository, which eventually evolved towards, there were a couple of different branches. There was the whole semantic web on one hand, and then there was the whole idea of, like, can we define what the golden record is through master data management? And these were noble ideas, but they required lots of manual upkeep, and anything, and the slightest change could totally throw things off course. And what you're talking about here, and I'd love for you to expand this a little bit more, is how basically AI could itself make AI better by using AI to help build this semantic layer. I think that's actually huge.
Yeah, I'll go back around that same time period, because in 1995, I was the third employee in a company where we created the concept of a metadata warehouse. And in my opinion, that metadata warehouse is king today in the world of AI, including both technical and semantic data, because when you have the semantic layer is really just metadata. It's metadata about the business, and then you have the technical metadata. And if you can connect those two, that's where you can now really power AI with context, with enterprise capabilities that move beyond just the usual kinds of use cases today to what I like to call hyper intelligent automation, right? So that you have a hyper intelligence from the AI fed into automations, and it continues to learn as it goes. But I don't think you can do that without that strong metadata foundation, and even a unified metadata. You throw the master data into that as well, right? Because master data is also, in my opinion, it's just metadata. And now with all of that in a single place, now you begin to have, in the world of AI, the active use of metadata. So it's no longer master data management. It's master data services. It's no longer metadata management. It's metadata services. And that's happening. That is not a dream. In 1995, we were way ahead of the curve. People were trying to figure out crystal reports, but it's fun to see that's actually happening now.
It's just so funny you mentioned crystal reports, because, of course, look at the genesis there, which is they got bought by a storage company, which just thought of reports would just increase the market, for selling disk.
Yeah.
I mean, they were right at the end of the day, right? Like,
In some way, fashion, or form.
Yeah. Okay, John, let's take it. So earlier you talked about your excitement about agents and kind of being the next big revolutionary step beyond where we are now. There's been a lot of talk. Agents have kind of been the AI topic of 2025. Tell us more. Like, where do you see agents going? What are the limitations right now?
I'm going to give you first my pet peeve. My pet peeve is just this frustration with everybody calling co-pilots and chatbots agents.
Yeah.
There's no agency involved in either of those. And
Right.
what I'm excited about is true agency, where you have these AI agents that look at tasks, but they're able to learn, they're able to reason, they're able to act, interact, react to things. They're able to adapt as they go. That's agency, right? And then they're acting on behalf. And what we're seeing right now is a sort of an upsurge of task-based agents, which is very possible. So you can go make make flight arrangements for me, find a hotel for me in this city. Very, very simple things. Tell me my top 3 sales opportunities in the surface from all of my activities, what I should be focused on today to achieve this particular result or goal. Those kind of things can be done fairly easy. What the progression that we're seeing is this move from task-based to persona-based. If you look at a company like Zenlytic, they have an AI analyst that can do almost everything that a BI analyst would do, and you just have conversations with it in plain language. You don't have to make it sound like SQL or sound like the database. And then we'll eventually get into entire work groups or ecosystems that are agentified. And I've done some work with a company that is looking at the entire software engineering lifecycle, not just coding. Coding is a small part of the piece, but they're looking at agentifying the entire software engineering lifecycle. So that stuff is exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So given all that, what do you see as basically being your next steps here? What are some of the takeaways you have, and what are some of your action items?
Well, I tell you what, I just launched an AI literacy course, and I don't like the word literacy. It's really an AI proficiency course. And because one of the big gaps is really just understanding of AI within organizations to be able to take full advantage of it. So I've got the leaders AI playbook, the managers AI playbook, and the individual contributors AI playbook. But it's really about teaching people how to use AI to be more strategic, and to not just to produce more, but to be more strategic, to have everybody aligned with corporate goals and organizational goals, and to really take advantage of the technology, and then to know enough about AI to be able to figure out how and where do we deploy it in our organization for the greatest impact. So when you have that across an entire organization, that's powerful. So I think this whole area of AI proficiency and AI literacy is a big deal for the next 12 months.
Can you just give us just one example, in this course? In other words, like, here's how you basically, here's how you put together basically the right strategy, or here's how you approach it. Just give one example of the types of things that you'll be teaching.
Yeah, well, one whole part of the course is about the fact that we don't need AI. AI needs us. It's about the superpowers that we have as humans, the things that we can do that AI will never do. So it's us inserting into the AI emotional intelligence, ethics, integrity, logical and critical thinking. AI doesn't have to be logical. It can be sarcastic, right? Or it can just tell you what it thinks you want to hear. It doesn't have to be truthful. How do we embed our personality into it? How do we understand other people's personality? How do we embed our particular voice? What about creativity? There are things and ways that we innovate and create as people that AI can only replicate. It's not truly creative. We are the creators. We're the strategic thinkers. So part of it is just helping people understand how do I embed myself in this, because we don't need AI. AI actually needs us.
Mm-hmm. So in other words, it's not the people becoming the cyborg. It's basically AI becoming a reflection of the people that are using AI.
Yep, exactly.
Like an extension. Interesting.
Exactly.
Interesting. Well, we'll see when this goes live. We haven't figured out when it's going to be released yet, but your course may be out by then. And so we will either have a link to general materials leading up to the course or possibly a link to the course itself.
Awesome.
Yes. John, thanks very much for taking the time.
Thank you.
And hopefully we'll basically be able to fly over Tuscany someday and just wave hello.
No, you gotta land in Tuscany and come and try our amazing olive oil and drink some wine and enjoy the Tuscan countryside.
Fantastic.
I've heard the wine. The Brunellos are not too bad. Sounds good.
How long does it take to get to the airport, from the airport to your house?
Oh, we are about 35 minutes.
Oh, nice. Okay, so you're way out there.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Amazing.
Well, John, thanks very much for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Sounds good. Talk to you later.
Thanks. Bye now.